came back to Ireland then?
Came back to Ireland in late '66. Came back to a very good job as secretary to AEI. They were an all English company. A couple of lads from Ford had joined AEI, and while I was at one of
Where were they, in Cork, is it?
Huh?
In Cork?
No, in Dublin. Dublin. While I was at his going away party, three of them actually. One of them became managing director of British Leyland afterwards, Derek Whittaker. And Derek said to me, "I heard you're looking for a job in Ireland." I said, "Yeah, kind of looking." And he said, "You got one." We were playing darts, and I finished up in Dublin, the secretary of the EAI companies, which was a big English combine with small companies in Dublin. And I was there for 2 years, and then we got taken over by GEC, got transferred down to Cork to run Munster for them for 3 or 4 years. Really enjoyed that, because when I was a qualified accountant, when I went to Cork, my function was basically marketing, and I learned an awful lot about sales and marketing, which is very important in the commercial world, and which is at a low ebb all the time in Ireland. We're very, very slow because of the snobbishness of my son and my daughter shouldn't be a salesperson, and nothing happens economically unless you can sell and market things. We're very bad at that, because even still today, I'm not sure that there's any degrees in sales or marketing in any of our third level education.
And what was Ireland like then?
Pardon?
What was Ireland like then?
Ireland was poor enough in the 60s, very poor actually still in the 60s, but what had changed is that the era of John Charles McQuaid and De Valera had faded, and Lamass had come in, and there was a kind of a buoyancy that things were going to happen, and they did happen at the end of the 60s. Beginning of the 70s were very good as well. The ICA had started. I was down in Cork, and we couldn't keep the supply of deep freeze fridges in the countryside going. We were always shouting to give us more and more of them. And the boss man came down once, and he said to me, "Cheers," he said, "what are you doing with all the deep freeze fridges?" I said, "I'm selling them." He said, "Where?" I said, "Cork and Kerry." He said, "You're selling more deep freeze month by month than the whole rest of the country put together." Just I didn't know that. And he said, "What's the thing?" I said, "Country Women's Association, they're starting up all these B&Bs and farm holidays and all that sort of a thing." And in those days they were doing the old flat fridges. They should have done the vertical ones, because when you open the top of a flat one, you dislodge everything. Whereas if you have a vertical one, you can put the trays in and out. It was all flat ones in those days. Nevertheless, we sold them, and the beginning of the 70s were very buoyant, and they slowed down then. I think there was a Nile thing about 73 or 74, but I joined the newfangled thing, the IDA, started about 1970, and I joined the IDA, which was the start of the IDA, and there was only about 30 or 40 of us working in the IDA, and the money was very poor in the IDA, but the satisfaction was very good, because we were meeting an awful lot of American firms coming in and taking them on itineraries, and we had very little to sell, but that we were part of the common market, spoke English, reasonably good education, but all the time the Americans were looking for talking to other Americans, and at the start they just weren't there. But like that it got going. And the other negative thing at the time, there was an awful predominance of textiles and shoe companies in Ireland, and all of those were closing down, so that there was a transition from the old thing, like in Cork, Seafield Gentex, Sunbeam Woolsey, Yall Carpets, and between the three of those I'd say there must have been 10,000–12,000 people working, and all of those declined and closed down, and the new ones were not as big on employment as the older ones, because the semi-skilled things on the old textile ones, there was an awful lot of people employed, whereas all the new industry that was coming in was looking for third level education, high tech, and this was kind of a transition period, and everyone was saying hang in there. One statistic, just in 1970 we did a survey, and there was 1 million people in Ireland dependent on agriculture, and we said we'd have achieved something if in 25 years that was reduced by half. Today I think there's only about 125,000 employed in agriculture, so that there's a tremendous transition from the old agricultural community to the new one. But maybe then with the building thing, things went a bit berserk altogether. But today Ireland has transferred itself from an agrarian, very high dependency on agrarian, and it's very efficient today because all the food stuff today, like Glanby and Kerry, are doing extremely well, green core, etc. And fishing is doing fairly well as well. But so also is the manufacturing. One weakness is that 1970-71 in the IDA, small industry was paid a lot of lip service to small industry, but the politicians didn't back it up because there wasn't seemingly any votes in pursuing small industry. It was neglected, and it shouldn't have been neglected. And there were certain county managers and personnel in IDA who were very, very keen to get the small industry going, and they didn't get any help from the powers that be. And today the signs are still there that we haven't got our small industry manufacturing the way other countries are. And it's one of the big weaknesses in Ireland, as you go from Donegal to Kerry, and we have very little of our own manufacturing. And the reason being is that manufacturing is hard, it's slow, and there's no instant gains like we had in the construction thing. And but it's more genuine than the sort of bubble that we've had in the construction thing, where everybody went into construction and made billions in their own mind overnight. Whereas in manufacturing, it's much slower, and you build it up. And I spent the rest of my life in operations and in manufacturing, and it's very satisfying to be in those things, because you can see things being made, you can see things being sold. And people say about the service industry, and you can have some of that, which is banking and insurance, but you have to have manufacturing in any economy, and that's one of our weaknesses. We don't have enough of manufacturing of our own, controlled by ourselves. And I've nothing against the big ones. The big ones have been very good to the west of Ireland, where I live, in Westport, Castlebar, Trathnall, Baxter is still there, which I joined in '74. Hollister are still in Ballina, Coca-Cola in Ballina, up and down the coast, Boston Scientific are in Galway, Northern Telecom are there, Beckman are there. Galway has been the success story really of taking the jobs to the people. That was one of the fundamentals of the idea, was taking jobs to the people rather than taking everybody into Dublin. It was the same, we were kind of copying London and still doing a bit, is where all the wealth is in one spot, London or Dublin. And that was one thing that should have been pursued and kept going, was take jobs to the people. It was in Galway, and Galway is a success story.